all know Easter's around the corner, but how many of us recognize the significant events that led up to the resurrection of Jesus Christ? I'm here to invite you to journey with us on the miraculous events that led up to Easter. It's story time. Let's go.
But speaking of Easter though, just the other day I was meditating or reading the Bible and just found it kind of interesting to see some of the things that sometimes we talk about when it comes to Easter that I guess we take for granted. But then as we're sitting here, it kind of reminds me of that whole celebration moment, imagining how Christ is entering into the city. You guys know the story, right? When before the crucifixion, he's supposed to be celebrated according to the scriptures. And then one of the things that I'm reading that kind of looks odd to me that I really never noticed in the scripture was how when he's entering into the city, one of the first things that he does is he calls on his disciples and he's like, I need to get a donkey to walk in on the city or within the city on. And then he sends the disciples to go fetch this donkey, apparently out of this inn. And these people don't know him, never met him, but then it just strikes me odd how the disciples go, they fetch the donkeys, and they're bringing it back to Jesus with no questions asked. You guys ever thought about that?
Why a donkey? Why not a horse?
Yeah. Or a camel.
That's a good question right there. Why not?
When they using camels back in the day? Who so?
Donkeys are slow.
Oh, so
maybe he just he wanted to make sure that his kingship was seen not gallop through the city. No, but I think it's just part of his whole humility, the significance of his humble self from the beginning, where he's born into a place of humility and then preparing his exit from the world on a donkey instead of a horse or one of these dignified animals. I think it brings even more significance to his level of humility. But it's just pretty awesome because even being that humble, he's walking in on a donkey and people are still recognizing him, right? They're celebrating him. They're throwing palms on the ground and putting clothes on the ground so that he can walk in just to revere him and honor him. I thought that was pretty awesome. But the thing that really stood out to me was just how they're hey, we need donkeys. Jesus needs them. Jesus? What? Okay. Let him have it. But anyways,
How did they request it?
Cool.
Uber
texted him.
Uber.
Was there
Snatched up.
It was Uber.
I was a donkey.
Uber donkey.
Uber donkey. Yeah. They have the big ones and the small ones, but it's kind of oxymoronic at the same time because right after that though, you see him because the whole thing that kind of leads to his whole entire death is a story of event after event that are, to me, that seem oxymoronic. They're backwards, right?
Okay, time out. What's oxymoron?
Okay, so
You guys using big words, man.
What is it?
so what oxy? What he said. No, an oxymoron is just whenever you talk about something and its opposite in the same context. Like when you say icy hot. Bittersweet, yeah, that's an oxymoron, and that is so to me. Once again, the oxymoron of the King of Kings on a donkey, and then right after that we see him at his buddy Lazarus's place, right? Lazarus and Mary and all that, and so they're
cool, right? Lazarus and Jesus, they were tight.
Super cool, super tight, so tight that he resurrects him. My friend can't leave. Come back to life. Actually, no. The day he actually goes to Lazarus, his place, is literally the day where everybody was literally there. Also, they're wanting to see this guy that just resurrected, and while they're there, Jesus is sitting, and then Mary brings this whole perfume thing and there's this whole act of her spilling it on his feet. Again, oxymoron. She's got this expensive perfume, and she's literally putting it on his feet, wiping it with her hair, which makes it like
Which was hers.
Her own hair.
Man,
bro.
come on now.
No weaves. No.
You coming for some donkey's hair?
Hey, it was an
No
oxymoron.
weaves.
You know?
Well,
Like, why did she do that? Like, what was she thinking while she was doing that? To give her most expensive perfume, wipe it off with her hair. Like, what was she thinking?
to me, I think it still comes back to that same message of, yes, she's humbling herself, but then she's presenting to him like his position as a king, and she's saying like, I don't mind giving my everything, because at the same moment, right, Judas, Jesus's y'all's favorite disciple, Judas, Papa Judas,
I like John.
Papa Judas was
You like Papa John?
I like Peter.
Papa Judas was there. And Judas is talking about how, man, she's just wasting the perfume. Could have sold it for this much money, and gotten money and give it to the poor and all that stuff. But the Bible also talks about how he's just saying that to impress people, because he used to be the treasurer. Go figure. The treasurer. no pressure, Ornell. But so he's keeping the money. Yeah, they work in the finance department at the church.
So we got Judas, we got Iscariot.
Iscariot.
Same thing. We're close enough.
African American
It's
version.
an oxymoron thing. I'm catching up.
That's a good one.
Hey.
Good oxymoron. But Judas has this whole thing about how they're just wasting. They're wasting because they could have used it and sold it, made money, give it to the poor. When he himself, the Bible says he's got his hand in the bag, so he's literally stealing on a consistent basis. Now, it also strikes me funny, oxymoron.
Exactly.
Here's another one for you.
Yeah.
So Jesus is walking around with this thief. The Bible literally calls him a thief, right?
We still on Judas?
We're still on Judas.
Okay, cool.
Judas, the thief,
All right.
while Mary is pouring, she's doing this whole act. But Judas, to me, is kind of out of place, because he's a thief, but he's walking with Jesus. Right? Have you ever thought about that? Like,
No,
so.
If Jesus, I did think about it. If Jesus knew who Judas was, why would he keep him around?
That's a good question.
Because if Jesus is around, well, it said Jesus did, hang around sinners, but that was to change the sinners' ways, not to conform to the way, but change them. But Judas didn't necessarily change his ways. So, like, what was the point of him, just being around? Yeah, sticking around.
I'm thinking the same reason he keeps us around. Like, some of us, some of us, we got that Judas in us. Every once in a while, it comes out more than others. But no, I think it really is, because it exemplifies how much he's able. I don't want to, not to say to tolerate, but he's able to handle all of our issues and still give us an opportunity, to come back to him. And even with Judas, knowing that he's a thief, Jesus brings him in the midst of him, like in his inner circle. And so the inner circle doesn't necessarily always have to be like a perfect one, right? As long as we're walking and abiding by his word, ultimately we have an opportunity to connect with him. So that to me is also an ultimate lesson of God's level of love towards us. And so as Mary is pouring out her her perfume, wiping with the hair. You've got Judas also, who's Jesus is exemplifying his love towards him by simply keeping him around despite knowing who he truly is inside, So you've got different personalities, different personage in his circle. So I think we look around us and we find the same thing. Like we have the same traits. Every once in a while you'll see and ask yourself, man, why is this person still being blessed by God? Like, how does he even tolerate their mouth and their attitude or whatever?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Come on.
Who are you talking about?
No, name dropping.
But pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
So we all some Judas over here.
Who's Judas? There's always a Judas.
Amongst
Well, I
us.
think it was still strategic because if Judas wasn't there, then he wouldn't have went to the cross, and he was part of the reason why he went to the cross. So
Purpose.
It was still
Purpose, yeah.
strategic. Yeah.
Yeah, there had to be a Judas ultimately around in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled. There had to be a Judas for him to ultimately go to the cross. But even the act of the cross is an act of oxymoronic act, right? Oxymoron act, because it literally kills him to go to the cross, but it also glorifies him to go to the cross because he's glorified through his whole sacrifice, right? So in the instance of his preparation to go to the cross, he's even talking to the disciples, and he's saying like,
crucified. He went to the cross.
He
just went to the cross.
Something is happening there that will not be resurrected.
Unfortunately, he needs to find his Judas, man.
It's not possible.
Well, okay. We can pray for that marshmallow, but I don't know.
Let's live in him. Come back in 3 days.
We'll come back and think, I love it.
Right?
Nice.
It's an oxymoron.
But I would like to ask a question. So, like Sister Gati said, it was part of the prophecy and Michaela said it was part of the prophecy that that a Judas was necessary, right? But I'll ask a question: did Judas have a choice to not do what he did? What he was eventually going to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe in my heart that God always gives us a choice, right? He gives us the opportunity. I think the scriptures clearly tells us that before us, he puts, two choices at all times. There's life and death, right? But then God always recommends us, and he gives us the answer. Actually, he says, choose life, right? And so the ultimate choice is ours because he gives us the power of choice. But then we do have to make the right choice. Now, if the heart of man is so evil that he can't even make the right choice when it's presented to him, because right there and then Judas had the choice to do good ultimately, but then we know how the story ends whenever we start talking about like how he was betrayed. Judas had the choice to make at that particular moment. But it was all to give God glory, because in his glory, at the end of the day, Jesus speaks about how in order for something to be glorified, it has to die. And dying is a process of being glorified. And so at a certain point, even with him talking to the disciples, he's showing them clearly that it's not a comfortable thing to go through the process of dying. But the reality is that we must die within ourselves. And I think that's one of the pieces that Judas went missing on, in the sense that he could not die enough within his flesh to allow for God to do whatever he could ultimately do in his life to help him.
So, like, in other words, what you're saying is, in order for somebody, like, they says God will bring you to glory. You can't go to your next glory without a Judas. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you can go from glory to glory without necessarily going through a Judas. But I think you will always have a certain level of storms if there's no Judas. Challenges and obstacles, and so there's always something that brings us to that point of having to overcome in order to get to a certain level. But yeah, I think it's a life experience. All of us, we deal with that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. How many Judases have you guys encountered?
Come on, man.
Man, I mean,
You got Judases in your circle.
I mean, is it fair to judge, like, and label people as Judases when you could be the Judas for somebody else's situation?
yes.
Wait, what's a Judas though?
It's a Judas.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, she's right, because it can apply to different stuff. It doesn't have to be.
But I think every Judas believes that they're doing the right thing to a certain extent. Every Judas will always justify their position as a rightful position, a rightful cause. So when Judas is stealing, or when Judas ultimately betrays him, he's doing so with a mindset that I'm doing this for the better good, or to help. So I don't know. To begin to define a Judas and to know who a Judas is, obviously Judas doesn't know that he's Judas. And so if I'm Judas, we could technically be a Judas without even knowing.
But we have a choice. Like you said, but we have a choice.
We do have a choice, yeah.
So technically,
Right.
Judas's journey is another going from the next level to the next level, because after he figured out what he did, I mean, he felt terrible.
He killed himself.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. He killed himself.
Oh, that's true.
That was an oxymoron.
Let's go. Let's keep it moving.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right.
Oxymoron.